Welcome to the Gaslight Effect podcast. I'm Robin Stern, co-founder and associate director of the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence and author of the best-selling book, The Gaslight Effect. I'm an educator and a psychoanalyst, but first and foremost, I'm a wife, a mother, a sister, aunt, and healer. And just like many of you, I was a victim of gaslighting. Please join me for each episode as I interview fascinating guests and explore the concept of gaslighting. You'll learn what it truly means to be gaslighted, how it feels, how to recognize it, and how to understand it, and ultimately, how to get out of it. Before we begin, I want you to know that talking about gaslighting can bring up challenging and painful emotions. Give yourself permission to feel them. Some of you may want to go more deeply with your emotions, while some of you may hold them more lightly. No matter what you're feeling, know that your emotions are a guide to your inner life. Your emotions are sacred and uniquely you. Respect and embrace them, for they have information to give you. If you want to listen to other episodes of the Gaslight Effect podcast, you can find them at robinstern.com or wherever you listen to podcasts. Thank you for being here with me. Welcome, everyone, to the Gaslight Effect podcast. I'm really thrilled to have my friend and colleague, Dacher Keltner, Dr. Dacher Keltner, with us today to talk about all things wonderful and awe, about generosity, about gratitude, moral beauty, and a lot about moral beauty, because I think it's something we really need to hear about. And as we were just talking about, Dacher, something we really need at this time in the world. And Dacher is a professor at University of California, Berkeley. He is the founder and founding director of the Greater Good Science Center, which is just such an incredible organization, sending out latest science, old science written newly, and to everyone. I mean, so the kind of writing I like to do, and the kind of writing that you guys do so well, and I recognize colleagues there, and just see all the things that people need to know about well-being and living a good life. And I just was thinking about how many years ago it was that we met during compassion research time at Facebook, at then Facebook, and how the subject was then bullying.
Yeah. Yep.
And here we are all these years later, living bullying in the world.
A culture of bullying.
Yes. And how incredible it is that we're still walking that same landscape in different ways. My work with Mark and at the center, and my work in standing up to gaslighting, your work in gratitude, generosity, awe, compassion, and now moral beauty.
It's nice to be with you, Robin, and thank you for this conversation.
Yeah, well, thank you. So I want to know what's your deep down inside of yourself reason that you've always written about things that lift people up, that move people forward, making movies so that you can start early with kids. And I just think your career has been incredible and really awe-inspiring.
Thank you.
So just tell us about you and how you got started and why.
Well, I think that I got started a couple of ways. I think that in terms of the deeper sources of all this work on awe and moral beauty and gratitude and compassion and and other things. One was I was raised by, in the late 60s by two parents who were really interested in beauty and awe. And my mom taught literature and romanticism. My dad was a visual artist. And then I think, this was the late 60s, and I've been doing a lot of, thinking about this as my parents get much older, and we were in Laurel Canyon, which was a kind of a hotspot of countercultural life, and people were horrified by Jim Crow and lynchings and killing 2 million people in the Vietnam War and later El Salvador and the treatment of women, the sexual violence perpetrated against women, all part of this package of, uh, a morally ugly vein of the United States. And my parents were active protesters. And I grew up, you know, as a 7-year-old and an 8-year-old, hearing about Martin Luther King and Bobby Kennedy and the anti-war protests and the like, to really about the alternative is a more morally beautiful society, right? Of gender equality and racial equality and nonviolence in foreign affairs. So that was kind of the atmosphere I grew up in. And then I got really lucky, Robin, just like your work in the sense that the science I was part of was so focused on anger and fear and, fight or flight, and that's the core of the mind. And I just kept having these experiences like, man, I feel so much compassion, or I love, or that is so beautiful. It felt just as primary to the human mind. And that has been, in some sense, my scientific career is to prove that.
So when you say that you grew up with those things, does that mean, for example, that you talked about beauty over the kitchen table and you talked about emotions over the kitchen table? And tell us.
Yeah. Two things. I remember early in my life, like wondering about the emotions, and my mom was like, you know, imagine a world where people didn't feel sadness. And I was like a 7-year-old, and I was like, wow. And what would kids be like if they're not, kids get sad when they go to school and leave their parents, and it made me realize like we need them all, and that has become not only a defining theme in my research, but Inside Out, which I've helped out with. Like we need all these emotions, even the hard ones. So it was definitely, my parents loved D.H. Lawrence and Virginia Woolf and Goya, the emotion people, the passion people. And so, that was part of it. And then, I have to say, early in my life, we were out in nature a lot, and we did these, 1968, like get in the VW bus and just drive into the Rockies, and a month just outdoors and, feeling that. And then, now I'm doing a lot of work on beauty and awe and wonder and with museums. And my parents took me to museums when I was, 3 years old. They were like my cathedrals. We didn't go to church, but we would go to museums, and I'd be in there and I'd be looking at paintings and natural history museums and thinking about dinosaurs. And so I started to really feel um, these contexts were so essential to uncovering the higher self of human nature, and I was lucky to get that early. Our kids don't get that kind of experience as much as they should.
I think it's so interesting. My mother was an artist,
Oh,
and
I didn't know that.
yeah, and she, in her early life, worked in the Brooklyn Navy Yard during the Second World War, but then she went into fashion illustration and she did painting and she designed clothing for a while.
Oh,
And she did murals in the large department stores in New York City for Christmas time, and we used to go see them. And then later she became a sculptor. And in my home, I have many, many sculptures, and people used to say to me, why does your mother drag you to museums all the time? Because I also was in museums all the time.
oh,
And I used to think of it as this was my mother's interest, so she wanted to share it with me. But I hadn't thought about it in the way that you just described it as like an introduction to beauty
yeah.
until I began to read your work, read this article, think about it, listen to you in other interviews, and think, my goodness, I actually had an early introduction to
Oh,
that.
yeah. And we're starting to do a bit of research on this, which I'm really proud of. That there's this thinking. How do we learn compassion, or how do we learn to be grateful for the food we get to eat, or how do we see the beauty and the grace of somebody who is always, lifting other people up. And, there's a lot of thinking right now that we actually have these wonderful traditions, cultural traditions that teach us this. We learn it through song and a good play. And in India, the Natya Shastra is this dance system that teaches people how to embody wonder and compassion. And for me, it was visual art, and I can remember, I remember, and I wrote about this in this book, like when I first saw De Hoog and Jan Steen and Vermeer and the Dutch masters when I was 14 and 15, it was like a psychedelic experience. It was bigger. It was just like, wow, the reverence for everyday life and women sweeping the floor or tending to a child or a little dog or what have you, which is what the heart of that art is. It changed how I look at the world, and I learned there's beauty in everyday life, right? It's not just a fashion magazine or a great nature scene. It's all around us, and yeah. So we forget in the well-being world that we're actually pretty good at producing it in music and dance and art and yeah. And so let's return to it. And it's striking. I've been working with museums. Museums have millions of people going to them, and they're these big curators of the meaningful life.
It's so true. I remember I worked on a museum exhibit here in New York at the Children's Museum for several of them during the time where it was an anniversary of the Peanuts cartoons. So Charles Schultz, so of course. And so we wrote the parent pieces that could accompany the different comics and parent questions. And I'm thinking now, too bad we didn't have this conversation then, because there could have been whole other worlds of questions, other exhibits for the Children's Museum. What an incredible thing
Yeah.
to be introducing children to beauty and the beauty of everyday gestures and everyday pauses and everyday intentionality.
Yes. And just to be able to look at it slowly. I love Immanuel Kant's description of art being in the free play of the imagination. So there's no threat to yourself as you come to understand, a person's grace or beauty. So yeah, and I think there's a lot of, we have work at the National Gallery. So if any of your listeners go to the National Gallery in Washington, D.C., there are wonderful exercises to see the moral beauty of a painting.
That's really exciting. I'm really glad to hear that.
Yeah, we're proud of it.
I encourage everyone listening to go see it. So I'm going to shift us a little bit now just to talking about gaslighting. So obviously you said yes to coming on this podcast, knowing that it was the gaslight effect and knowing that that's a big part of my work now, or in my clinical practice for sure. And I wonder how you understand the connection between gaslighting and moral beauty.
Can you define the term for me? Because it's used a lot, and I just want to have the expert tell me precisely what it is.
Well, I'm really glad you asked that question, because many people on the podcast probably are asking the same questions, but everybody's talking about gaslighting these days.
Yeah, no, it's everywhere.
I mean, it really is about the seeking to undermine the reality of the person who you're targeting. It's really about that insidious and repeated over time within a power structure imbalance and
Nice.
the intentionality of convincing somebody that the way they see the world, it's not right, or that
Yeah.
there's something wrong with them, or that there's something wrong with that particular situation, or that they lied, or they misremembered, or there's something wrong with their character.
Yeah, I think that you can look at our polarization in our culture in a lot of different ways. We are the most polarized country in the world. Polarization, largely, the data show, comes out of disliking people who are different from you. And the polarization is manifold. It's, conservative Republican, conservative liberal. Democrat, Republican, uh, you know, fundamentalist Christian, non-Christian, um, a little bit less so class, race, etc. And I, in studying moral beauty, um, you know, the power of moral beauty is that you see other people's virtue, their kindness and courage, their humility, their sense of justice. They fight, they protect, and you're moved to grow stronger societies and healthier communities, and you just do things to better people's lives. And then the counterpoint is, and philosophers have written a bit about this, is moral ugliness, which is where you dislike human beings and you're cynical and you think they're only out for your harm and you undermine them, and you bully them and you exclude them and you racially profile them, you do sexist stuff towards them and you gaslight them. And that's a part of a strategy of, just there's a place in human affairs for social strategies, that we see a lot in politics today of undermining strategically for your gain. And gaslighting sounds like an example of that. And we've learned a lot about where it comes from. It comes from loneliness and cynicism about the world, and too much immersion in technology, digital technologies, in cultures that condone it. So yeah, I see it almost as being antithetical forces in our lives, right? The gaslighting, undermining versus the moral beauty uplifting. And man, is it playing out right now in our world. It is profound.
It is profound. And one of the things that I want to add, just for our listeners, is that not only do you come upon gaslighting or intentionally use gaslighting because of loneliness or fear or whatever, people who happen into it or use it for that reason the first time, um, discover that it works.
Yeah.
And it's very powerful when it works, when you can actually uh, lead someone to second guess what they know to be true.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's very powerful in then gaining control in the moment,
Yep.
or gaining control of dependency on you. If you're the gaslighter and you're the one doing the gaslighting and you want to keep somebody dependent on you, then if they believe that your reality is the reality, they have to keep coming back to find out what the reality is.
Yeah.
And I think that that you're right. It is like a counterforce. And so to hear about, to read about moral beauty and to look forward to your book about moral beauty,
Thank you.
like the abundance of examples when you just open your eyes
Yes.
and look around the world, it is really that counterforce to gaslighting, to thinking that this is the way it is. No, you are in this bubble for a while and you forget that there's goodness and there's kindness. I had a colleague who uh, believed that that's the way she deserved to be treated. That's the way people treat each other after a while. And then somebody suggested she do some volunteer work, and she went to do some volunteer work, and all of a sudden things were different. People cared about her because of her generosity. People cared about her because she was a lovely human being. And she began to see that other people were doing the same thing. They were lovely beings and they were doing good work. And there was light and there was lift and there was smiles, and it was completely different than her home. And she got divorced and lived a different life. It is sometimes it's a question of that exposure. And in this world, sometimes you're living in that bubble where there isn't that exposure.
Yeah, there's this deep principle in of contagion, and you think about it colloquially as like your sense of home and place and community. Um, and and when you start to cultivate moral beauty and practice kindness and practice humility, it tends to spread to other people, right? And it tends to create these clusters of just healthy, vibrant kindness in social relations. and you can be in little pockets of the world. Academics can be very adversarial, and where there's, you know, people challenging your view of reality or what have you. And so we have to really actively think about those sort of that immediate circle of people that brings us that sense of moral beauty, and gaslighting being a thing to avoid. So
Yeah. So what do you think about prescriptively for people who are looking for more moral beauty in their life, or they're listening to this and saying, well, how do I get some of that? It sounds pretty good.
yeah, it's really, I mean, there's so many ways to do it prescriptively, and thanks for asking that, Robin. Um, one is kind of what we've been talking about, which is to think carefully about the content that you're going to be exposed to and see. And so we know the morally ugly is disproportionate online. People are more likely to get bullied than in real life, and harassed, and sexually groomed. And so just horrible stuff. So, you got to watch out for that. I always remind people, and it's fascinating, some of our favorite forms of art, and there's work coming out of UCLA on this, is morally beautiful. The amazing Steven Spielberg film, or the Forrest Gump, or whatever it is, and we love those movies, and we love those forms of art that inspire us. I think it's really important to do, what religions do. I'm not a religious person, but is to think of, and this is an old thing people used to do in schools. Contemplate people who inspire you. Just like, wow, I and reflect on their character, friends or grandmothers or what have you. And then there are really simple stuff to do. Like, there's a lot of data showing, if we return and think about what the technologies are doing to interrupt this, like striking up conversations with strangers when you feel safe tends to make you suddenly, you're like, God, people are so great. This guy's so interesting, or she's so, I didn't know that. Make eye contact. Is a making eye contact. It's fascinating. Kind of can produce oxytocin release and make you open to humanity. So there are a lot of things to do, and regrettably, online life works against it for the most part, and everything that's been disrupted by online life. So get back into contact with people.
I'm just thinking about the incidental conversations that are sometimes so amazing. I ran into a colleague after a meeting. She was in the back of the room. I didn't see her come in. I haven't seen her in years, and we really liked each other, but just didn't get a chance to connect. And it was just a moment that lit up my whole day.
Yeah.
It was just incredible.
And there's neat research by Nick Epley and Juliana Schroeder on this, where they asked people to strike up conversations in Illinois with commuters on trains and buses. And what was interesting, it lifted people's spirits really dramatically. But then in other research, they asked people, like, do you think this is going to make you happier? And they're like, no, it's going to be horrible, And so we have it all wrong. We should be striking up those conversations, and, doing these things that reconnect us to the humanity of others.
I think about the story you told about your mom, and the one I told you back about my mom taking me to museums and being an artist, and I am a mom, and so I think about how inspired I am actually by both of my children.
Oh.
And yeah, definitely I am. They're both incredible human beings, and both have overcome things in our family life that are remarkable, the way they have dealt with them. So I'm very inspired all the time. But I think about the what my mother would say if she were here, thinking about her teaching of beauty, and did she do that consciously? What would your mother say if she were here in this conversation and hearing you tell that story? I'm sure she knows. I'm sure you've told it to her, how you were inspired.
Yeah, and my dad too. My dad. I think they would say a couple things. They would say that, I think my mom would say, we need to teach children, like I taught you, beauty, because she would recite poetry to me and give me William Blake's quotes and show me images, William Blake's paintings and so forth. Like, for her, it was really about imagining better worlds,
Hmm.
like this, and that's a pretty strong. There's a lot of agreement about why we do art is to stir the imagination to think of better things. Because she was, frustrated with the sexism of her times in the 70s and 60s, 50s. And my dad would say to him, it was about authenticity in some ways. Like when you feel, and we've got research growing on this, that when you're moved by the beauty of something, like what moves you, Robin, to a feeling of beauty in the artistic world? What's something?
Music.
And can you tell us a specific song or
The
artist?
G minor ballade by Chopin, the Romance pianist.
Uh-huh.
And I just feel the music. And actually, I would say that I'm moved by so many show tunes as well. Like The Sound of Music. I'm moved
Yeah.
by that. I'm moved by
Oh,
the opening scene in The Sound of Music.
oh. Um, well, what we're discovering is our feelings we all are moved by different things, right? And that's actually very fortuitous because when we're moved by a piece of music or a piece of visual art, it speaks to us personally about what we really care about, right? And so there's something in Chopin for you that it captures romance. For me, the fact that I love minimalism in music, and here and George Harrison and the Beatles, Within You, Without You, the Indian, drew me into the spirituals, that I hungered for that, and I feel it in me. So I think my dad would say, my mom would be like, art helps us imagine better societies. And my dad would say, whatever speaks to you tells you what your purpose is, what you really care about. And they're both right. We need art for many reasons, and I think that's what they would say.
That's interesting. Well, I'm going to be thinking now about why I have so much primitive art around my house now. Is it because I'm really like seeking a
Ah,
playful, whatever kind of life? I don't know. I don't know. But I want to take you back, I think, to earlier times for you, just because I know people are listening and being thoughtful about their own histories as they're
yeah.
listening to my pod. And like, were there times that you were seeking? Were there times where you were seeking awe, where you needed it for soul growth? And would you be willing to share?
Yeah. I grew up, you know, in some ways, um, given my background, awe has always been the kind of the transcendent passion that spoke to me the most. Along compassion in very more select and intense situations, taking care of children, orienting to humanity. But awe really, I had a really awe-filled childhood. It was just, from rock and roll to sleeping under wild stars to rafting to protest to dance to etc. And people of moral beauty. And um, the and I was lucky in that, given this early encouragement, when I went to college, I was like, I'm going to let whatever I feel awe inspired by guide me. And I wish more young people did that today, because now and for a lot of reasons, they're thinking about data science or engineering or whatever will get business, and so I wish we need more awe inspired. So that was easy.
Did you
Like
actually think that? Were you playing with the word and the concept when you were in college?
a little, I was very interested in transcendence and like, you know, what is that transcendent state, which is very closely allied with awe. Um, when I raised daughters, and in the awe book, one of my heroes is Rachel Carson, who the great environmental writer, who says, teach your child to wonder.
Mm.
And in this hard moment of raising children, really competitive, very pressurized, lots of anxiety, as you know.
Yes.
That was my compass. Like, whatever, let's go walk in the woods, or let's listen to this music together, or let's all dance, so that was a time. And then most importantly, Robin, was when my brother passed away, and he was a year younger. My brother Rolf, he was really my closest companion in not only in awe, but in some ways life.
I'm so sorry. Dacher.
Yeah. And he got colon cancer.
Oh,
That's brutal. It is horrific.
so sorry.
Uh, and then he passed. I got, like with grief, I was really destabilized, and awe brought me back, and opened me up to new things. And I watched water and rivers and thought about the meaning of water. I went to a few places, Gandhi's ashram. I love Gandhi, nonviolence, Martin Luther King. Like, what is this? And I felt it. I would go to music and just really open myself to the awe, go to the art museums. And it changed my life. It really did. It helped me understand death and the loss of a loved one. So I really feel, and I feel really bullish about this, like having written this book and the science, like right now, our culture needs to go for awe. Awe is good for your immune system, your heart, helps with long COVID. It helps with depression and anxiety. It is good news.
Can you tell us the science? Because I can imagine that there are some people that are saying like the world is like falling apart. Like who has time for awe? I mean, I could imagine some cynics saying who has time
yeah.
for awe? When now is the moment for awe, of course.
It is. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, just basic things. Awe you can feel pretty easily. People feel it a couple times a week. Einstein thought it was a basic state of consciousness. He's right. I have felt moments of awe in this conversation. You can feel it easily.
Yeah.
It is not correlated with wealth. You don't need money to feel awe, right? You can go to, listen to a piece of music and feel it. And then the science it's really good for you. It reduces inflammation. It elevates vagal tone, which is good for your heart. We're just publishing a paper. It's good for a little moment of awe, just like stopping, pausing, looking at the sky, thinking about the clouds, or listen to a piece of music that brought you chills when you're a teen. It's good for pain. It's good for long COVID. So it's easy to do. The science, I've been in this business of well-being science for 30 years, and awe is as good a thing to do for your mind and body as anything you can do.
What makes it awe instead of just feeling good?
There are about 10 positive emotions that, gratitude and compassion and interest and amusement and love and desire and triumph and pride, and awe is one of those, and those all feel good. And then awe is when you feel good around really vast things, incredible music, that takes your mind to vast spaces, nature, the vastness of somebody's moral beauty. So it's vast and beyond your ordinary understanding of the world, and you can't make sense of it. You're just like, how could that be so beautiful? How? Who knows? How could the sky throw down these lightning bolts when my daughter and I were backpacking a couple summers ago and hit the ground? So it's vast and mysterious.
Yeah. It's exciting too, as you're talking about it. I'm excited.
It is. It's very exciting. Yeah, it's and it really, and I think the excitement is both bodily. It kind of activates parts of your body that make you excited and energized and empowered, but it's also exciting intellectually. Like,
Yes.
wow, I'm thinking about new things right now,
Yeah. And how do you reach to understand it or reach into understand it? I mean, when you say the word mysterious, just this image of like incredible mystery, clouds, and
I think I think that's a deep question. And in my thousands of conversations about awe, no one's asked that question, Robin. How do you understand? I think that's the real challenge of the emotion, and awe in particular is because it has so much mystery in it. And that's why I asked you the question about Chopin. Like, what is it about Chopin or show tunes that speaks to Robin in a deeply personal way?
it takes me away. I mean, I want to say that, like, it takes me away somewhere else. Like I'm somewhere else.
Yeah. Um, and then you can ask the question of like, well, why that's, piano sonata or whatever it is by Chopin? Yeah, why is it that minimalism, Steve Reich, Philip Glass spoke to me, John Adams, and that's where it gets really interesting. And then you start to tell your story like, oh yeah, because I heard it when I was a kid and I listened to it with my dad and I remember the show with my best friend and
Yeah.
it helped me during a really sad time or what have you. And so I think that how we start to what we understand from awe is our lives, what really is meaningful to us.
Mhm.
It's the same with moral beauty. Who's a person of moral beauty to you?
So many. I was going to say the Dalai Lama, who
Yeah.
just, he is like the ultimate person of moral beauty. But there are many. I mean, actually, when I stop to think about it, you're a person
Oh.
of moral beauty. My son, who has overcome so much
Hmm.
and gives to others,
Yeah.
and he inspires me quite a bit.
Hmm. Your story just moved me, which is really, isn't that fascinating that stories of moral beauty move people around them?
Yes.
And you just moved me deeply. Yeah. And so, but that becomes really interesting to your wonderful question, Robin. Like these emotions of moral beauty and awe, these feeling states beg inquiry, right? They're like, like why is it in the book, I am moved a lot by prisoners who change their lives. I have volunteered inside, I work with them outside, and they inspire me. And I'm like, it's like they overcome. Why is that? And I have to ask that question about my life, like, and I have some answers. And that's what these emotions do for us, is they help us tell our story.
Why do they inspire you?
I think they inspire me because I uh, I overcoming and resilience is a common theme in moral beauty. Just people overcome disease, and I was, when I watched my brother with colon cancer, and a lot of people when they're around loved ones who are ill are blown away by their courage, as I was with my brother. Just like, God, he's so strong. And then with prisoners, I think my parents early on, it was fascinating to, when I asked that question, I started to inquire and I was like, wow, my mom taught in prisons and my dad writes to prisoners. And so they did this and I didn't even know that. So
Wow.
there's something about the marginalized that speaks to my family and me and is always inspiring. So, and that's why we need more of it. I think our young people need to be asking, sort of thinking who these people are and then inquiring what it means for their life.
It's interesting. What you're sharing so generously really brings me back to my mom. Has a couple of times in our
Oh,
conversation, and which I really like, and
yeah.
I miss her. She's been gone for about 13 years now, and but when I was young, when I was in high school, she started a tutoring program in a town near us where there were a lot of underprivileged children, and it was really inspiring to me. And so I started the junior program of that in high school. And I mean, we were kind of clueless, and we went you know, into this area, and we tutored them in different subjects, and I felt wonderful about it. Of course, we were then really clueless, and we didn't realize that bringing them to our homes to have dinner as a little treat would be really so unsettling, and would have the opposite effect and make the divide between us quite
Yeah.
dramatic. But
Yep.
so we made some mistakes,
Of course.
but they it was an incredible effort to do for others because we had what we had
Yeah.
and we weren't hungry and they were hungry, or we
Yeah.
knew math and we could get tutors or whatever it was. It was very inspiring. My mother was very socially active and was inspiring.
Yeah, and one of the things that I think a lot of people are concerned about in our digital world is, we're working harder, time moves faster. When you think about how we're exposed to stuff online, it's usually isolated, separate, fast images, etc. And we don't have intergenerational contact like we used to, and we're not telling these deep stories of, that both of our examples point to of like, oh, my mom did this and I started to do this and this led me to a caring profession. And moral beauty is a great kind of a galvanizing force for that of like, ask the question, who inspires you and then why? And then off you go. So
I hope that when you write your book, you'll be inspired to run some retreats and I'll sign up immediately. I
oh,
just the having the conversation about it is so nourishing and so uplifting. And I think having a retreat where people are steeping in it,
yeah.
what a gift that would be. Uh,
Yeah.
each one of us who signs up, I'm signing people up already. Even
No,
after.
but one of the beauties of writing the awe book is to see it is now making its way into, we have a school program
A book.
there. Thank you, Robin, that gets kids to feel awe in nature and music. It's helped with palliative care. People are using,
Oh, that's wonderful.
yeah, and moral beauty. I agree. I think there's a whole offering around it of like, think about the novels that you love. Alyosha Karamazov and the brothers Karamazov. When I read about him, I was like, wow, he's so selfless. Think about the movies, think about music that moves you morally, think about the people, most importantly, and you know, fill your life with them. And it does have that feel of like, I feel better about this world right now.
Yes, I think that would be such an antidote to what so many people are like living moral distress. I think that's actually when I read this article, when I was writing about moral distress, and I thought, well, there's got to be a way out or through or
Yeah.
healing, and that is. And thank you, Dacher, for bringing this to the world,
Oh, thank
reading
you,
it,
Robin.
and for writing about it. And I'm looking forward to the retreat. So.
I'll start asking where I can host it and let you know.
I think it's great. Well, it's really been such a pleasure. Please tell us, before I ask you to tell us where people can find you, what are you planning to do this summer, this year that's exciting, besides writing your book, which is obviously
Yeah, thank
wonderful?
you. Well, I uh it's a really interesting time for me, and what happened thanks to Awe, the book is, and in conversations like this is, I've been pulled into a couple of projects that are just not only exciting intellectually, but I feel will help the world. And one of them is um, to help bring people's experiences of awe to the surface of experiences in green spaces. So we're working, and also museums. So I'm working with the National Gallery and also the national parks, just to, you go to a national park, there you are, and you're wondering where the bathroom is, and you're looking at your phone, and you forget, like, you're in this amazing place. So
Yeah.
we're doing that work of like working with interpreters to bring awe to them and the beauty and the transcendence of it. And then it's so fascinating, Robin. I'm working on a Cities of Awe project with Gale Architecture, an amazing architecture firm that moves into cities where most people live. 70% of carbon emissions come out of cities. It's a good focus. Uh, and to bring awe to those spaces, right? To think about a little neighborhood and what could you add, like a, nature, a mural, a reflection pool, whatever it is, that brings more awe. And I think there's just a lot of interest in Chicago and Singapore and lots of places, Kyoto, of like, let's make cities human again and beautiful again and inviting to strike up those conversations with other people. And I think it's going to be a 15-year challenge that will probably carry me to the end of my career. Like, can we make that work?
So inspiring and amazing. But in the meantime, where can people find you?
Yeah, well, they can find Awe, the book, at Amazon or a local bookstore. They can find probably the best place to find me. My scientific articles are in lots of journals. And then the Science of Happiness podcast that we do has a nice sized audience and covers a lot of the happiness science that you know of. And so
Yes.
that's a good place. And then I'm at UC Berkeley. And my favorite burrito restaurant on Cancun most times, most lunches.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I'll bet there are people who'll be running there after this. Thank you so much, Dacher. It was
Thank you,
really
Robin.
a joy to be with you, and I've really, really enjoyed our conversation. It's meant a lot to me, and I'm sure to people listening.
Me too. You've got my vagus nerve humming. So
Oh, I love that. Love that. And I'll be looking forward to that retreat. Don't forget.
Okay, I'll get working on that. I wrote it down.
Great to see you, and I'll be in
Yeah,
touch. Thank you,
nice
Dacher.
seeing you. Thank you. Great
Thank
conversation.
you, everyone. Thanks for joining me for today's episode. I hope you found it helpful and meaningful. If you want to listen to other episodes of the Gaslight Effect podcast, you can find them at robinstern.com or wherever you listen to podcasts. And please leave a rating and a review. I also invite you to follow me on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and Twitter. This podcast is produced by Mel Yellen, Mike Lenz, and me. All of my work is supported by Susan Pettit, Marcus Estevez, and Imaginarium. Also by Sally McCartan and Jackie Daniels. I'm so grateful to have many people supporting me, and especially grateful for all of you, my listeners.